In this video, we're going to go ahead and set up our look and our move functions through the player controller and into our pawn. So the first thing we want to do is in the player controller, we're going to go to our setup input component, and we need to add a mapping context and bind to the look and move actions. So to begin, let's go ahead and make a protected section in our player controller. And inside of here, not sure why I wrote protected, we want a U property. And this one's going to be for the input mapping context. So we're going to let's do edit defaults only, give it a blueprint read only, and category is going to be input. So T object pointer of U input mapping context. And we're just going to call this one let's do movement mapping context. I think that's a decent name. And make sure you go ahead and forward declare as well. So next up, we need two input actions. So move and look. So T object pointer, U input action, and this one's going to be look. And then same thing, T object pointer, U input action for move. So same thing, go ahead and forward declare U input action. And we now have what we need. So inside of setup input component, we need to basically get access to our enhanced input component. So by default, we do have the input component, which we can cast directly to the enhanced input component. However, we do have our own. So again, from that gameplay abilities prerequisite series, we have the ability system enhanced input component. We are going to be utilizing this specifically because it allows us to very easily activate abilities from inputs. So U ability system enhance input component. Let's go ahead and include it. Components ability system enhance input component.h. And we'll call it enhanced input component equals cast U ability system enhance input component. And we are just simply casting from the input component. So I'm not too worried about checking to make sure that this is valid. As long as we set it in the project settings, it will be. So once we have that, I believe it's from the enhanced input component that we add a mapping context. No, that's from the subsystem. So we need from here the, what is it called? Like enhance input local player subsystem, I believe is the name. So we get that from the local player. So get local player. What is it? Enhanced, or it's like get subsystem. Yeah, get subsystem. U enhanced input local player subsystem. Let's go ahead and store that. Local player, or let's just call it enhanced input subsystem. All right. So gonna move this up here and make sure to include enhanced input subsystem. So once we have that, we can then add a mapping context. So that mapping context being the movement mapping context. And then we need, let's see, what else? A priority, we'll do 1. And then the remainder can be default. Okay, so once we have that, we want to go ahead and grab our enhanced input component, do a bind action, and this is going to be our input actions. So remember our move and look. I'm going to actually rename this one to look action and move action. So we're going to bind look action and it takes in the trigger event. So E trigger event, we're going to do being completely blind, triggered. And this is going to bind to this as the object and then the function. So A SKG player controller. we want to bind it to look. That's simply going to be the name. So we need to make that function. Let's do the exact same thing, but change it to move. And then look action is going to be move. I wonder, can I make a function? Yeah, I can. That's kind of nice. So now we need to make the look and move functions. So very simply, void look. It's going to take in a const f input action value. Let's go ahead and include. Let's just call it value. So include input action value.h. Make another one called move. And we now have our two functions, like so. All right, now we can make use of the input delegator interface. So we have our input delegator interface right here, and we want to go ahead and make our move and look function. So it's basically these two, so we can just copy and paste, and they are going to both be virtual. And same thing, we need to add a simple implementation, like so, just so it doesn't complain. And I think we can forward declare these here. All right, so we have our look and our move interface functions. Now we can call them from our player controller from our pawn, or through basically just passing in the information of value to our pawn. So we're going to go ahead and do if I input delegator interface. So let's go ahead and include it, like so. Let's just call it input delegator equals I input delegator interface. And what we're casting from is going to be the get pawn. Actually, that has a templated version. So what we can do instead is simply do get pawn using the template version, like so. And that'll go ahead and do the cast for us. Once we have that, input delegator, look, and pass in value. Same thing with move, just call move. And now those functions are going to be basically just fired on whatever pawn we are possessing, at this point in time. It's just going to be passed right on through to it. So we can quite literally just go to our SKG pawn. Under here, we're going to do look and move. Basically just override those two functions, and we are good to go. So what I'm going to do now is simply UE log temp, warning, text. I want to print out look, and I'm going to print out move. So I want to make sure that our functions are actually getting passed to our pawn to make sure we're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead, compile and launch. And what we need to do inside the editor is go ahead and change over the enhance input component that's being used to be the U ability system enhance input component rather than, the default one. So that way it'll actually, work. Okay, so once we have that, here we have our player pawn, which is SKG pawn. Don't worry about that at the moment. We're going to go to our project settings, go to input, and default input component class is going to be the ability system enhanced input component. So we set that and save. Next up, we want to go ahead and inside of our, our game mode here, our world settings, we're going to grab our game mode, which is the third person game mode. Wrong monitor. And we want to change the player controller class to be, we need to make a blueprint version, but it's going to be SKG player controller. And we need to change the default pawn class to be there's SKG, BP player pawn. So let's go ahead. Now that we have that, we need to make the player state blueprint and the player controller blueprint. So under core, let's make a new folder called player. And this will be our SKG player controller. So BP underscore player controller, and same thing, SKG player state. So BP underscore player state. And open these up. And we can go ahead and set them in our game mode. So player controller class is going to be BP player controller, and player state class is going to be BP player state. So let's compile save, and they should be good. Player pawn, player controller, and player state. So that's good to go. We actually don't need to open the player state, but we do need the player controller. So movement mapping context, this can be just the IMC movement, which is from SKGSF core, and likewise the look from SKGSF core input movement, and the move from the same place. So SKGSF core input movement. So let's go ahead and save that and hit play to make sure that the input is getting passed. So I'm moving forwards, back, left, right. As you can see, they all have printed move. And when I move my mouse right, up, left, down, as I'm moving my mouse, it is also printing out look. So that means our functions are in fact being called. And that's what we want. So in the next video, we are going to go ahead and wrap this up by actually implementing the look and the move functions. But what we can do in the meantime is basically just go ahead and delete the remainder of the third person, because we no longer need the inputs or the actions or the blueprints, but we do need this game mode. So what we're going to do is take this third person game mode, and we're just going to move it to our core folder inside of SKG Zombies, update redirectors, and just real quick do a save so that we can delete this third person folder. So delete and force delete. Now let's go to our Zombies core folder. Let's make a new folder called Game Modes and move it in there. From here, let's just go ahead and actually we'll leave it the same. This is likely going to get deleted at some point because we are going to make our own. So we'll update redirectors again because we moved it, and save. So we know we are good to go. We have our look function being called from our pawn, and same thing with our move. So like I had mentioned, in the next video, we're going to go ahead and get those set up. So yeah, I will see you in the next video.